14 teams are going to make the playoffs, 7 in the AFC, 7 in the NFC. The biggest playoff field we have ever seen in the history of the NFL. But how many of these teams are actually capable of winning the Super Bowl? And the way I look at it is, if you're going to be the wild card team, which 12 of these teams are going to be, you have to be capable of winning 3 games in a row against 3 outstanding teams. And if you're going to get the bye week like Green Bay, it appears, and certainly like Kansas City are, you got to be able to win 2 games. So I want to break this down and have a little discussion here. I'm going to tell you guys who I believe is capable of winning the Super Bowl, NFC and AFC. And I want you guys to listen to my arguments and tell me whether you agree or disagree. So let's start in the NFC. I don't think there would be any disagreement that the Green Bay Packers are capable of winning the Super Bowl. They are on fire as we come down the stretch. They just put a beating on the Titans. They have won, how many games is it in a row? 5 games in a row. The last time they lost was in overtime on the road against the Colts. And if you'll remember, they had control of that game and kind of choked it away. The other game that they lost was back on November 1st against the Vikings. A little bit of an ominous loss there because Dalvin Cook just went off on the Green Bay Packers. But given the home field advantage in Lambeau, and I think you saw it on Sunday night against the Titans weren't ready to play in the snow. They kind of tiptoed into that game. They were down 19-0. The Packers were very comfortable. Nobody could cover Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdown passes, only had to throw the ball 25 times. Basically no pressure on him the entire game. I don't think there is anybody out there who is an NFL fan that doubts that the Green Bay Packers can win 2 games in Lambeau and advance to play in the Super Bowl down in Tampa. So I am going with Green Bay, indisputably, very much a legit Super Bowl contender. I think they can get it done. I think the Saints can get it done as well. Right now, the Saints are slotted in as the number 2 seed. They have lost, I'm sorry, Saints fans, for having to bring it up, 3 straight years in the postseason on the final play of the game. That is absolutely crushing. You had the Minnesota Miracle, the play that I would have made for longtime listeners here. I would have never allowed that pass to be complete, and if it had been complete, I would have made the tackle. I've been arguing that for 3 years.
Yeah, right.
The Minnesota Miracle. Then you had the worst call ever, maybe in a major NFC or AFC championship game, where they blew the pass interference call, and as a result, the Saints end up losing in overtime to the Rams. And then last year, Kyle Rudolph, I believe it was, in overtime. I think it was overtime. Was it overtime at the very end of the game? Last play of the game. I think it was. I think it was overtime. But Kyle Rudolph makes the catch in the back right corner in the Superdome for the Minnesota Vikings to win that football game and beat the Saints again. All right. I think the Saints, with Drew Brees back healthy, I love their defense. I like what Taysom Hill, certainly Alvin Kamara, 6 touchdowns he scored in the most recent game for the Saints. I like the Saints to be able to win 3 consecutive games if necessary. Seattle. This is almost entirely a faith in Russell Wilson, but I think the Seahawks can get it done. I have confidence in Russell Wilson. The defense has actually become the bigger story for the Seahawks. I think they could win 3 games in a row in Seattle and go on and win the Super Bowl. So the first 3 seeds I feel confident in the NFC. Whoever wins the NFC East, home playoff game there, 0 chance to win the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm going to be honest with you, even as good as Tom Brady is, I don't really feel like they can go on the road and win 3 straight games coming out of the wild card round. They've never done it before. They would probably have to play the Saints, who have just dominated against the Bucs so far. And I just don't see them winning 3 games in a row. The Rams, the Bears, or the Cardinals, none of those teams have a chance, in my opinion, to get hot if they were to make the playoffs. So I think there are 3 teams that can represent the NFC in the postseason. the Packers, the Saints, and the Seahawks. I don't think anybody else is a realistic contender. Danny G, you buying or selling those three, and is there anybody else you would add to the equation in the NFC?
I definitely like those three. Green Bay, the Saints, and the Seahawks. They all have good enough defenses to go deep. Tampa Bay, you're right. That defense looked really good at the start of the season.
All three have, by the way, Hall of Fame quarterbacks,
right.
too.
Yeah, don't even need to mention their offenses because we know about that. But you're right. It comes down to defense here, especially when we get into the playoffs. And, man, that Seahawks defense has looked good lately. We know all about the Saints defense. And Green Bay's defense has kind of been under the radar throughout the season, but they are good enough to get it done. Tampa Bay, I'm right there with you. They are kind of on the borderline. Rams, if Jared Goff...
No, the Rams have no chance to win 3 games in a row.
First of all, look who the Rams' backup is who's about to play because of Jared Goff's thumb surgery. If the Rams had like a Marcus Mariota-type backup, then I would be confident that their defense could carry them because they are a running team, and their defense is one of the best in the NFL. But no, with how things sit right now, they are not going to get it done.
Yeah, so 3 teams, you agree with me?
Yep, 3 teams.
Dub, would you agree that those are the only 3 that can win the NFC?
Yeah, I would. And speaking to Danny G's point, if you would have asked this question 3 weeks ago, I would have definitely had the Rams in there. But losses to the Jets and then last week against Seattle, Jared Goff, that was probably the worst I've ever seen him play. I get he was injured part of that game, but my God, that was awful.
Yeah, you get the sense that Sean McVay wants to choke Jared Goff out, right? Like if they were in an MMA ring, you just look over on the sideline, and he seems very, very frustrated with Jared Goff. And this is one of those situations where it seems like sometimes this happens. That my Titans, for example, are a perfect representation of this. For a long time, you want for one side of your team to be a lot better than they are. And then finally that side gets good, and the side that you've been relying on to be good for several years stinks. And so the Rams, for a long time, they've been like, man, if we just had a little bit better defense. You know, Sean McVay's an offensive genius. We're going to score points. We're going to make plays there. We don't even need to worry about the offensive side of the ball. And now the Rams might have the best defense in the NFL, and their offense has fallen apart. Same thing has happened, by the way, with my Titans. Titans may have they have one of the best offenses ever, probably the best offense in the history of the franchise. The defense has always been kind of a calling card for the Titans, and suddenly the defense collapses. If the Titans just have an average defense this year, then we're talking about the Titans, we'll get to them in a little bit, as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Instead, I don't think they are because the defense is just so bad. So I think that's what's dealing and going on with the Rams right now. So Eddie Garcia, 3 teams that we believe in the NFC. Are those the only 3 teams that can win and advance to the postseason based on what we've seen through 15 games?
I think I believe a little bit more in Tampa Bay than it seems like the group does, but...
So you think they could win 3 games in a row on the road, because that's probably what they were going to have to do in order. I mean, and I say probably because there's always the possibility that the 6 or the 7 seed could win a couple of games and Tampa Bay could get to host a playoff game even though they'd be the 5 seed. But the likelihood is that Tampa Bay would have to win 3 games in a row on the road.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm as confident that they can do it as Seattle can do it.
I could see that a little bit. Maybe, but I feel like the Seahawks have been more consistent than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been. Now, if you want to point to the Bucs being able to do it, what you would point to is the best win of the year by far for the Bucs. They destroyed the Green Bay Packers early in the season. What was the score of that game? Like 38-10? That's the best game that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have played all season. I believe Green Bay was undefeated when they went into Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken, 3-0 or 4-0 or whatever the heck it was. And Tampa Bay absolutely obliterated them. It's the best game Tampa Bay has played all season. 38-10, like week 4, week 5, something like that. And that's where you would point to it and say, hey, the Bucs have a chance. But what we've seen from the Bucs down the stretch has not convinced me that they have a chance to win 3 straight games. Because Tom Brady has won the divorce with Bill Belichick. And I think if you're a Bucs fan and I had told you that the Bucs were going to go 11-5 because I think there's a good chance they beat the Falcons to finish the season. If I had told you they were going to go 11-5 and they would win the final 4 games of their season, I think you would have been pretty impressed with that. But basically down the stretch run of the season, every time the Bucs played a good team, they found a way, it felt like to me, to lose down the stretch run of the season. Remember the big game that the Saints and the Bucs were going to play where the Bucs were going to get their revenge back on November 8th? Saints came to town and won 38-3. Okay? And then everybody's, well, like the Rams are coming to town. They have to travel all the way across the country, and the Rams dominated that game even though they only won by 3. And then the next week you're like, oh, the Bucs are going to bounce back here. Now they're in good shape. And then the Chiefs came to town and they were up 17-0, and Tyreek Hill had like 200 yards receiving in the first 20 minutes of that game. And so, yes, the Bucs have beaten the Vikings, the Falcons, and the Lions down the stretch run here. But I just don't feel like there's any way possible that they're going to go on the road. And remember what they would have to do. Let's give them the win over the NFC East team. Then we're talking a decent chance that the Bucs would have to go on the road the next week in Lambeau against the Packers. That seems like a pretty tall order that the Bucs would have to come across. And then even if they won that game, they're then likely to have to go on the road against either the Saints, who have whipped them twice by double digits, or they would have to go on the road against Seattle and travel all the way across the country from Tampa Bay to win that game. I just don't think the Bucs are a legitimate contender. I think there are 3 Super Bowl contenders right now in the NFC, and those teams are the Packers, the Saints, and the Seahawks right now. What about the teams from the AFC? The Kansas City Chiefs clearly can win the Super Bowl. They are, in fact, the prohibitive favorite to repeat as Super Bowl champs. They have won 23 of their last 24 games, which is unheard of. By the way, even if this were, say, the NBA or college basketball, if a team goes 23-1, certainly in Major League Baseball or hockey, we all sit back and we're like, wow, that's an incredible accomplishment. To do it in the NFL is frankly almost unheard of how good the Kansas City Chiefs have been in the last 24 games. To win 23 of them in a year and a half of football is unprecedented. Their only loss against the Raiders, they've played a lot of close games, but clearly the Chiefs can win the Super Bowl. I think that the Buffalo Bills can win the Super Bowl as well. Josh Allen has been a revelation. It's no great surprise that Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers are the top 2 MVP contenders this year. It appears Aaron Rodgers is going to win the MVP. But I don't think anybody out there anticipated that Josh Allen was going to be as phenomenally good as he has been this year. The Bills are sitting at 12-3. They're the number 2 overall seed in the playoffs right now. I don't have any doubt at all that they could go to the Super Bowl. In fact, I think they are the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs that is out there. Okay, so I believe in the Chiefs. I believe in the Bills. I'm going to stun everybody now. I think those are the only 2 teams from the AFC that are capable of going to the Super Bowl. I don't buy into anybody else. Have you watched the Pittsburgh Steelers play over the last several weeks of the year? Yes, they got hot in the second half, and they beat the Indianapolis Colts. But I don't believe that the Steelers have what it takes to win 3 straight games in the postseason. Not after we just saw them lose 3 of their last 4 games. The Titans right now are sitting as the 4 seed. I don't think they have the defense to be able to win 3 straight games. In particular, the Titans have the worst third down defense right now in the history of the NFL. The Titans have allowed 52.5% of their opponents' third down percentages to be converted this season. That is the worst third down defense that has ever existed in the history of the NFL. That is a stat you do not want to lead the league in. As good as the Titans can be on the offensive side of the ball, and they can be very good, Derrick Henry potentially rushing for 2,000 yards. You've got A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, both 1,000-yard receivers. Jonnu Smith at tight end. This is a really, really skilled offense for the Titans. Ryan Tannehill has obviously been playing very well. They have no chance, in my mind, to win 3 straight games based entirely on how bad their defense is. It's an Achilles heel. Right now, the Miami Dolphins would be your 5 seed. Tua is not good enough at quarterback. As good as this defense is, Ryan Fitzpatrick is not good enough as the relief pitcher. The Miami Dolphins are not good enough to win 3 straight games on the road to go to the Super Bowl. The Baltimore Ravens. I understand people are getting fired up about the Baltimore Ravens, but when the Ravens have tended to play against good teams, they have crumbled. They lost to Kansas City. They lost to the Titans. They lost twice to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are 0-4 right now against the best teams in the AFC. I don't believe that the Baltimore Ravens would be capable of going on the road and winning 3 straight playoff games. Right now, by the way, Baltimore would be going on the road against Buffalo. Josh Allen against Lamar Jackson, that would be a phenomenal wild card round playoff game. But even if the Baltimore Ravens won that game, they next would probably have to go on the road against the Kansas City Chiefs. I just don't think there's any way that the Ravens are good enough this year to go on the road and beat the Bills, and then the next week go on the road and beat a rested Kansas City Chiefs team. I don't believe that Baltimore can win the Super Bowl. I don't believe that the Cleveland Browns or the Indianapolis Colts, whoever might come out of that 7 seed, would be able to win 3 games in a row either. The Browns have just been way too enigmatic, way too unreliable. I don't believe in Baker Mayfield to win 3 straight road games in the postseason, and neither do you. And I don't believe enough in the Indianapolis Colts either. And so I believe as good as their AFC is, and it's potentially the case that they are going to have 8 different teams that win 11 or more games, I think the only 2 teams that are capable of going to the Super Bowl out of the AFC are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. That might be a little bit of a surprising perspective from me because there are a lot of people out there that want to sell you on the idea that there are many different teams that could find their way into the postseason. But that means my total is, out of the 14 teams that are advancing to the postseason in the NFL, I think there are 5 that can win the Super Bowl. In the NFC, the Packers, the Saints, and the Seattle Seahawks, and in the AFC, the Chiefs and the Bills. Danny G, you buying or selling that theory?
Selling. I'm a little surprised. I wrote down 4 teams. Chiefs and the Bills, obviously. The Bills were my preseason Super Bowl pick, so I'm sticking with them. But I also have the Steelers and the Colts. Last week, that was an amazing comeback against the Colts that the Steelers had. It looked like the old Big Ben. If he looks like that in the playoffs, I would not bet against him and Mike Tomlin.
They're not going to win 3 games.
I don't think you could say that.
I think you can. If you've watched them play the last month, there's no way they're going to win 3 playoff games against 3 good teams.
And also the Colts. What a defense. And they are a running team, which counts for something in the playoffs, as you know. So I just think that you need to count the Steelers and the Colts in there. I don't think that you can have either of them off of your list right now.
I think I might have misspoken, by the way, now that I'm looking at it. I think the Bills would be scheduled to play against the 7 seed, which potentially would be the Colts.
Right.
I think I said they would be playing against the Ravens. The Ravens would be going on the road right now if the schedule was set up as it is against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And by the way, I think the Ravens would win that game, even though they've lost to 2 times to the Steelers already. I do think that they would find a way to win that one based on the way those 2 teams are playing. All right, what about you, Dub? You buying or selling my idea that there are 2 teams in the AFC that can actually win the Super Bowl?
I'm selling. I think there's 3, and you just named the third team for me. It's Baltimore. Because this team.
I understand that argument, but the Ravens would have to go on the road and beat the Steelers, and then they might have to go on the road and beat the Chiefs, and then they might have to go on the road and beat the Bills, because you know they're going to have to play, theoretically, 3 games in a row on the road. I just don't see that being possible.
I understand that argument, but from my point of view, what happens in these games is bad weather. And if there's one team that's equipped to play a game in bad weather, it's Baltimore, because they can run the ball on anybody. And Lamar Jackson, the last 4 games, he's been looking to run 94 yards, 124 yards, 80 yards, and 35 yards. That's over 300 yards the last 4 games. And if there's one guy you don't want to see in the open field, I think it's Lamar Jackson. The defense has been playing really well too. So I think there's more than 2 teams. I think you got to throw Baltimore in there as well.
Eddie Garcia, what would you say?
I'm going to have to agree with you on this one, Clay. I'm not a believer in my Steelers. It would be nice if Ben Roethlisberger could play all of his games like he did in the second half against the Colts, but he hasn't done that all year. They've been a team that a lot of times, even during their 11-game winning streak, they'd play a great half, but either the first half or the second half would be really mediocre, and you can't advance deep in the playoffs playing one really good half of football. So I wouldn't include my Steelers in there. I'd actually put your Titans ahead of my Steelers if I were kind of ranking the teams 1 through 4. I'd have Tennessee 3 and Pittsburgh
Blasphemy.
4. Yeah, I'm just being realistic by what I see. I don't believe in the Ravens at all. I don't believe in Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. I don't care what the weather is like. So I'll have to agree with you that it's Kansas City and Buffalo.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the futures odds right now in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs are minus 133 is the number that I'm seeing right now on Fox Bet. And I'll look at FanDuel too. And by the way, sometimes people say, you use Fox Bet or you use FanDuel. It's the same company, right? Just it's like Coke and Sprite, right? They're owned by the same company. So I think it's kind of interesting just to look at their difference. And the Chiefs have almost the exact same odds. So the Chiefs are minus 130 at FanDuel, and the Buffalo Bills are the next most likely team at plus 450. Followed by the Ravens at 7.5 to 1, the Steelers at 10 to 1, and the Tennessee Titans at 13 to 1, the Colts at 17 to 1, Browns 25 to 1, the Dolphins are 37 to 1. That's not to win the Super Bowl, that's to win the AFC. So the Chiefs are basically, they're telling you that they are more than 50% likely to actually make the postseason. And if you're curious on the NFC, it's a lot more jumbled at the top. The odds makers are telling you there are 4 teams that could win the NFC. The Green Bay Packers, 2 to 1. New Orleans Saints, just shy of 3 to 1. Seahawks, 4 to 1. And the Bucks are 5 to 1 before you get to the Rams at 12 to 1. So I think there are 5 teams that are out there that have a legitimate chance to win, but that's pretty intriguing.